Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the main act of the whole Campervan Campout weekend. It's the final presentation of the weekend. Look at him. He's bursting at the seams.
Really?
We've been waiting for this moment all weekend. It's great to have Carl with us from Built Not Bought. Did you know that 6 years ago, Carl was sat in a chair weighing nearly 30 stone, unable to move? And look at him. I'll tell you what, if I was 10 years older...
My tape, Matt, sorry.
So he'll share this story with you as he goes through his talk. But can I have a big Campervan Campout welcome for Carl?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon or good evening. This is almost a bit of a story about who I am, where I am, and it's all about the community that I've built on Facebook. And hence the Facebook up there with my smiley face. But we're going to go back to where did it all start. We touched on this yesterday at the podcast that Matt was doing. And for me, it all started here, in a van that looks exactly like that one, even the same colour. Obviously, back then, there was no digital cameras, so we couldn't have loads and loads of photographs. Didn't have a lot of money, but I was lucky enough to work as a mechanic for a company called Coombs Motors, which was Vauxhall. So I had, although it's the Opel version, I had the Bedford CF. Mine did have the sliding doors, and I remember driving down the road, doors open, foot up on the pillar. It was just one of those things. And I threw a mattress in the back of it. And that van, with me and the mattress in the back, went everywhere. And not far enough, though. I will say it didn't go far enough because it was a case of when you're young, you used to go out on a night out, pull up in a car park it up with a mattress in the back, come out of the club, jump in the back and go to sleep. That's how it was. Always made sure the keys were out of your pocket so you couldn't get done for drink driving because it was as bad back then as it is now. So that is really where my journey began. And I did that for many, many, many years. And even when I look at it now, it still makes me smile that that's where it first began. But I didn't start building campers at that point. And I did all sorts of jobs throughout my life. I worked on building sites, apprenticeships and different bits and pieces. And back then it was a YTS scheme. And I was being paid £26, 26 pence a week. With that, I even passed my test. Difficult as it was, and I say life's changed a lot now. But later on in life, I decided to don a suit. And I became a letting agent. And I wanted a job. I never saw myself ever wearing a suit, but I wanted a job where I could wear a suit, look the part, but not be stuck in an office. So this job came out with a company called Andrews Lettings. And it started me off, I suppose, on a corporate journey. And it taught me a lot. It did. It taught me a lot. I became qualified, and I had letters after my name through being a letting agent, and I was quite pleased with that. It was like my name with letters. It was a bit of almost like stardom for me. So many friends went to university, had letters after their name, so that was my version for me. But I became very, very successful in the property industry very, very quickly. Almost like a victim of my own success, because I walked into this job. I had the tattoos and everything, and my manager at the time said to me, "Carl, sit in front of me. I want you to tell me your story about you. I don't want you to tell me what you know about the company." And I'd spend nights and nights and nights looking at their website because they were run by a charity. And prepping for the interview, I thought I'd done really well. And then he says to me, "Tell me about you and your life and your story." So completely threw me off guard. So he said the interview might take 10 minutes, 30 minutes or 3 hours. Doesn't matter. We're here to talk about you. So I sat there and I waffled and I waffled and I waffled. And I stopped and he looked at me and said, "Is that it?" I said, "Well, I can tell you more." He said, "Come on then, tell me more." And he said, "I'll tell you when to stop." Anyway, I carried on. And I said, "I think that's about the best of my life." He said, "Okay, have you got anything else to say?" I said, "Yeah, when do I start?" And he went, really? I said, yeah. Anyway, he said, okay, hang on a minute. He disappeared off and he was gone 10 minutes. He come back. It took him 10 minutes to find his business card just to write another time and a date on. He said, I want you to come back and come and see the area manager. And me being me, I'm a bit gobby. I went, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He said, well, it's a second interview, so it's a pretty good thing. So again, I had to go away, prep for this interview. And I remember standing there thinking to myself, I've just researched this company once, I've got it all up here, and I'm going to go sleep tonight and forget every bit of it. And which I did. So days before the interview, again, I prepped. Thought the area manager's going to want to know what I know about the company. Got to the interview, sat down, he said exactly the same thing, tell me about you. I thought these guys must be twins. So again, I waffled, and both of them sat in front of me. So Andrew, his name was Andrew Yude, and he was a South African. He said to me, right, okay. He said, I think that's the end of the interview. He said, you know, I'm impressed with what I see. He said, do you have another question? Or do you have any more questions? And I said, yeah, when do I start? And he said, oh, okay. And he said it exactly the same way as my manager did, which confused me. Then I stood there, and they sort of had a little bit of chat between. I said, have you got any more questions? I said, yeah, I've got a question for both of you. And I said to them, what would your work colleagues say about you and working for you? I said, what would they say about you? Would it be good or bad? Which I thought was quite brazen at the time. And they both looked at me and they said, firstly, you close a sale, then you ask personal questions. So I left the interview feeling, absolutely blown it. Within an hour, they called me back and said, you got the job. That's where I came to become an estate agent. Well, I say an estate agent, it's a letting agent. And throughout that, I used that same attitude to let properties. And I became an award winner every year with the company. And within a few years, I had a phone call from the Letting Agents of the Year award, where I became what was known as a runner-up. And it was actually second place, which gutted me. I wanted first place. And that was run by the Sunday Times and the Times. So that was an award which I could actually put on every email to say that I actually got that award. So to say I was successful, yes, I was. But I always felt that I was being held back. Once I got to a manager, I went through as being a letting agent and then assistant manager and a manager of the branch that they put me in. I sensed that branch was failing, and I felt like I was put there as a scapegoat. So sure enough, I became quite poorly at that time, and over the time I got worse and worse, and I ended up in hospital and out of hospital. It was all with my chest, and I decided to leave. And I then went to a company, on a room letting company, letting out HMOs. I stayed there for about a year and then decided I wanted to do my own. So I set up a company called Get a Room. And that was the local MP at the time where we was, in Eastbourne. I decided to go further, set up the property maintenance side of things. So I had that, and we used to do bespoke rooms, which you can see here on the left-hand side. And the rooms were absolutely gorgeous. They used to go like hotcakes. And at that time, HMOs were such a big thing. And again, as time went by, I felt something wasn't right with inside me. I became very, very ill. And as Matt said, I ended up very, very big through I couldn't train. I was stopped training. My chest got worse, in and out of hospital, on steroids. And I got to nearly 30 stone. So my doctor said to me, I'll give you 6 months, which took me to my birthday. And if I didn't change or do something about it, and I always thought having bariatric surgery was cosmetic. No one should ever, I was totally against anything cosmetic until I sat in front of my doctor and said, you need to have that done. So as you do, I went to the hospital and I was told it was going to take me 26 months before I'd even got under the knife. So I paid private, and I had a gastric band. And it was probably the best thing I ever done. But I've always been this size until I got ill and took steroids. And I realised life was too short. It was so short that at any moment, you know, you could end up and you're dead. And as cold as that sounds, I needed to change something again. And so I went to a friend's club once and spent the weekend there, and he had a camper van. And when I saw his camper van, I said, that's what I want. And I was camping in a two-man tent. And the faff about putting up a two-man tent, I don't know if anyone here's put a tent up, but this little two-man tent took me half an hour. I was sure it was going to take me about 5 or 10 minutes, but I've never been so challenged in my life. It was sweltering hot. So in this little red tent, I was sweating. I couldn't put clothes anywhere. My car was parked miles away, and I thought, you know, I can't do this. So I was determined to build my own camper van, and that's where it started. And I said to him, I'm coming back to your weekend do next year, and I'm going to have a camper van. Lo and behold, the following year, I had a camper van. So I decided I needed another business, and excuse little man here, I'll explain about him in a moment. So I decided, if you look at the middle photograph, decided to build myself a little window cleaning van. That was what I was going to do. Something simple, something less stressful, because the property industry I felt was going to kill me. So there I was, building this little window cleaning van, and that was in January 2019. I decided, and the reason I had to put him up there, he's a cutie, he's here today, and he helped me. Now, bear in mind, he's like 16 months, 18 months there, and some of the things he does with tools at that age frighten me to death, but I had to put him up there because he's my world, that little boy. He's not mine, he's my grandson. So, and, you know, he's a little diamond. Well, anyway, so there we are, building the window cleaning van, and March 19, I thought, that's when I'm going to launch my window cleaning business. What happened in March 2019? They locked us down. So that went out the window. I held on to it. I carried on building my van. And then you had Covey version 1. Now, everybody said to me, why did you call your van Covey? So Covey wasn't nothing to do with COVID. If you look at the letters and rearrange them, they spell Iveco, because I had an Iveco daily. So that's where Covey come from. And on Facebook, I'm known as Covey Campervan Carl, although I no longer have that vehicle. So that is Covey. So travelled to Bradford, drove all the way up to Bradford to go and pick this van up. So chuffed with myself that I bought this van, got there, picked it up, drove about half an hour back, and the clutch went. Didn't even get nowhere near back home. So I limped it back up to the garage thinking, oh my God, they're going to stiff me in my cash because I paid cash. Took it back to him. He said, oh, no problem. He said, we'll sort the clutch out. And they did. They did sort the clutch out. But that was like hours worth of drive there and back on a second journey. But do you know what? Didn't faze me. And finally got it back home, and I stripped it. Stripped it all out and started my build process. And that is a painful job in itself, stripping a van. And then you've got to get rid of everything that's in there. So Covey version 1 looked like that. And there I am with my little gazebo beside it. And as that cushion on the bed says, happiness is a journey, not a destination. I think we said that in Matt's podcast yesterday. It's all about the journey. So I was proud of that van. So again, because I wasn't the healthiest of persons, from getting that van to finishing to that stage took me 84 days. Now, someone said to me, don't rush the build, don't rush the build. So that 84 days, I also had a hernia operation right in the middle. So off into hospital, hernia operation, come out and finished it off. And and the only reason I rushed and wanted to get it done because I was going to Camp Quirky, if any of you know that. And that was my first real big event. And I loved it. I was so proud of that van. And then I realised very, very quickly that where I rushed it, the layout was all wrong. And it didn't look right. I had too much white in there. For me, there was things that, was totally wrong. So then we had Covey version 2. So Covey version 2 had a bit more, quite a few more changes in it. And as they went for a bit more colour. The bed was moved a bit further forward so I could have some panelling at the back. This sink, so Karen, who's working on Gorilla Grub, she helped us do a tip run one day. She rushes out to the tip shop and pulls up this bowl, and it's an IKEA mixing bowl. Shows me it's the dirtiest bowl ever. I said, what are we going to do with that? She goes, why don't you turn it into a sink? So she goes, I'll clean it up. And we got it back, we cleaned it up, we painted the outside black. So I had this really nice stainless steel bowl in there. And as you can see over there on the far side, it turned out really well. We used copper pipe, brass fittings, painted it up. And do you know what? That van lasted me quite a while until it got sold a lot sooner than I wanted to get rid of it. It also got a paint job, and that's the colour of it. And it's aircraft grey. Gave it a bit of an overlander look, put some bigger the off-road tyres on it. And that was used for quite a while. And as you can see, any of you know Mark from Bluefix, there he is, stood there. I've known him quite a few years as well. And that van served me so well. And I love the Ivecos because that one had done 450,000 miles and it's still going today. So when people go out there and say to you, oh, don't get a van over 100,000 miles, to me, I say, don't ignore that. These things are built to last. So that's how it got sold. And so I then started Built Not Bought Campers. Totally out of the blue, during COVID, excuse me, and my business partners wanted a horse box built. And one thing led to another. We ended up getting a unit and taking other work in, doing all sorts of vehicles. And now we do so many different things, whether it comes to camper trailers, we fix motorhomes, we've built a Renault Traffic up recently, it's just about to be sold. And so that's where, and Built Not Bought Campers was born in 2021. So, along with Built Not Bought Campers, went all over social media with the Facebook group and YouTube. I put a lot of pressure on myself to create 2 videos a week. Now, putting myself under that much pressure, again, was going to make me ill. And I realised that pretty soon. So, I've sort of not done so much on YouTube much. I've concentrated on Facebook. I've done some TikToks. But Facebook, the group on there, the Built Not Bought Campers group, went through the roof. And when I say went through the roof, I took a screenshot of that middle of the week. And as you can see up there, we're at 58,700 members. Now, these are self-build people on there. You do have people with motorhomes on there. It doesn't matter. But the amount of advice regarding batteries, building any style of van, there's all sorts on there. You'll get some people showing what they've done on their vans this week. We try and inspire people to interact with the group, and regular posts, scheduled posts go out asking what you've done this week. And we even ask about events and festivals on there. And as you can see, we've got our festival up there. I'll talk about that in a moment. But that group is building sort of, it just keeps going and going and going. I've had to take on an extra member as admin on there. So after the Built Not Bought Campers started, I realised by doing lots of other shows, volunteering at other shows, that I should have my own show. And then in 2023, last year, we created this show, Van Life and Overlander Celebration. And for me, the show had to take on a certain look, a certain feel. When I say van life feel, it's not about vans, it's about the camping culture. Whether you've got a tent, whether you're in your car, whether you've got a caravan, motorhome, campervan, overlander, it really doesn't matter. Everybody is welcome at that show. There's a pitch for anybody and everybody. I don't care if you turn up and you want to buy a van and you're staying in the hotel down the road for the weekend. This is literally a family show. And I found working at other shows, a lot of people were saying there's not enough to do for the kids. Kids are getting bored. So in my ultimate wisdom, I decided we were going to have Nerf guns. Any of you don't know what a Nerf gun is? So, right, these things, we had a box full of the Nerf guns, and we said to the kids, help yourself, have a play around. So, one of the guys that works for me at Donk, I said to the kids, there's a guy driving around in a white Luton. He's got a big beard. Go and get him. And he came up to me, he said, did you give the kids permission to shoot me? I went, no. But he now knows I did. And I'll tell you something, they didn't leave him alone all weekend. He'd be driving around, he'd have about 100 kids running after him with these Nerf guns. It was funny to see. So we had a craft area for kids, and all this was free, and like the guys got the axe throwing, the sort of plastic axes, we did that as well. And again, this year, we're going to add more crafts. We're looking to book on more free kids' activities because we know how expensive some of these activities can be. And so the show's taken sort of almost like it's grown, it's almost like an entity on its own, really. And people say, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? And it's like with this year's show, we've decided to go down the country and western route a little bit, half a day. We've got a rock band, and it's all about trying to cater for everybody. I know I will never please everyone, and I know there's always going to be someone saying, oh, it wasn't good enough, they didn't do this, didn't do that. And again, it's down to money and budgets. It's all down to that. But the feel of the show had what I would say the van life feel. People were asking me at last year's show, when tickets for this year was going on sale, could they buy them there? So it's a good show. As you can see here, it shows you what we got this year. If you book your ticket before Tuesday and type in the code Warners10, you'll get a 10% discount.